This video is designed to be viewed either in one sitting or as separate modules. We hope you find it useful. Welcome.
June 16th, 1812, New York City. The city's population was less than 100,000, and the nation was composed of 18 states. Alexander Hamilton's Bank of the United States had failed, and it was the eve of war with Great Britain. Despite the problems, New York City was fast becoming the financial center of the country. A meeting occurred among a group of local merchants concerned about the financial instability of the times. Among them was Colonel Samuel Osgood, a distinguished captain of the Minutemen, and a close friend of George Washington. The outcome of the meeting was a charter for a new bank, the Citibank of New York. Colonel Osgood was elected president.
September 14th, opening day, and a handful of employees greet customers at its first home office, a two-story building at 52 Wall Street. As Citibank began to grow, its management gained a reputation for stability and solvency. Despite a severe financial panic in 1837, Citibank paid its dividends, and in a second panic in 1857, 985 banks in New York State failed whilst Citibank added depositors.
1861, and a troubled nation plunged into civil war. President Lincoln turned to the New York banks to solicit $150 million for the Union. Citibank responded with a $70 million subscription in gold. War's end. Citibank surrendered its state charter and joined the new national banking system, becoming the National City Bank of New York.
President Moses Taylor led the bank's involvement in a venture to lay the first transatlantic cable in 1866. This reduced the time to complete overseas banking transactions from months to hours. Under the leadership of James Stillman, the need for the establishment of a foreign department in 1897 to serve the bank's largest corporate customers with overseas operations was another sign of its continued growth in international finance.
By the turn of the century, many European companies with overseas operations were looking for trade financing outside Europe due to the growing political instability on the continent prior to World War I. The financial community of New York City responded to this challenge as it looked to replace London as the financial capital of the world. This expanded involvement in foreign trade and finance spurred Congress to pass the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, which allowed U.S. national banks to operate branches overseas for the first time. These were branches for corporate customers, and they paved the way for consumer banking through our branches worldwide.
National City Bank, with the establishment of a foreign branch in Buenos Aires in 1914, was the first bank out of the gate. This milestone was followed shortly thereafter by the acquisition of a controlling interest in the International Banking Corporation. The IBC network of 21 overseas branches in 13 countries became the backbone of National City Bank's international involvement. The IBC branches in Panama played a major role in the financing and operations of the Panama Canal. The addition of 60 new branches over the next few years brought the overseas total to 81 branches by the end of the decade.
The United States during this period was booming. The Roaring '20s ushered in a period of spectacular economic growth. The music of Gershwin, the antics of Chaplin, and the courage of Lindbergh energized the culture. The '20s witnessed unprecedented innovation in consumer banking. The first of today's financial centers opened at Madison and East 42nd Street, and the bank offered compound interest on savings accounts, a first.
1928 marked another revolution in banking. National City Bank was the first to open a personal credit department, giving the working class access to services once reserved for the affluent. Expansion accelerated with a merger with the Farmers Loan and Trust Company in 1929. But towards the end of that year, the U.S. economy had lost its energy and was in serious trouble. More than 500 banks went out of business that year as the stock market collapsed in late October. Despite suffering significant losses in the crash, National Citibank, with profits running at a record pace, remained the largest commercial bank in the world as the 1920s came to a staggering close. During the Depression years, 30 of the least profitable overseas branches were closed. In China, however, profits from the financing of international trade and from the foreign exchange operations were at an all-time high and helped support the bank's less profitable business during this period.
World War II put a stop to operations in Europe and the Far East. Following the war, it was boom time again in the U.S. The demand for credit from industry more than doubled between 1945 and 1948, and more than tripled for consumer loans during this period. With consumer income rising, the era of mass banking was upon us. Overseas, with branches reopening in Japan and the Philippines, and with existing branches in Latin America and London, National Citibank maintained the most extensive foreign branch system of any U.S. bank. In the 50s, the U.S. economy reflected the music that swept the country, rock and roll. But as Elvis made his fans swoon, many faint-hearted investors feared the same fate for the market and another depression. Overseas, with the specter of Russian tanks rolling through France and Germany, caution was also the watchword for the bank. The number of foreign branches at 61 was the lowest total since the 1920s. In a move to offset the loss of income from the reduced foreign operations, the bank sought to increase its share of the U.S. corporate market. One step to accomplishing this goal was a merger with the First National Bank in 1955. The merged institution was renamed the First National Citibank of New York.
In the 60s, as the revolution fervor of the coffee houses moved into the college campuses, the feeling of change was in the air, and change was a dominant theme for the bank over the next decade. A new home at 399 Park Avenue was completed. The 150th anniversary of the bank was celebrated in 1962. The name of the bank was shortened, the First National Citibank. George Moore became chairman. Walter Wriston became president. The Everything Card, the forerunner to the MasterCard, was introduced, and 231 branches were serving customers in 48 countries by 1969.